Hey girls, welcome to the Asterisk Podcast. I'm your host, April Biondolillo. Hey girls, welcome back to the Asterisk Podcast where I'm your host, April Biondolillo, and today on the show we have Izzy, which you have all seen and heard from her before. If you've come to Cherish Conference, she is one of our favorites to hear from. Izzy Hoyam is a licensed pastor and graphic designer from Bellevue, Washington. She currently works at Sambika, a Christian kids camp reaching the kids of Seattle. She loves to inspire the next generation on who God is calling them to be. Izzy spends her time going to concerts, eating chicken nuggets with ranch, and watching Disney Plus. Izzy, I love it. I love it. Thank
I
you
have
so
to
much.
I have to report that my Disney Plus subscription has been canceled.
Ah,
So that part is no longer true, but I do
okay.
all the other things still.
But we still have the chicken nuggets with
We still
ranch.
have the chicken nuggets with ranch.
I love it. Hey, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I know this is going to be a favorite for many.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. I love you, and I love all the women that are a part of the Cherish and Asterisk team. So I'm pumped to be here.
Love it. Cherish an Asterisk team. You know what I joke
Mhm.
about? I don't know why I picked the most difficult title of this podcast because I mispronounce it every week. And people will be like, why are you saying it? It's supposed to be asterisk. And I say
Oh,
asterisk or
really?
asterisk without the S. So now I get
Well,
really in my head. I'm like, only I would do that to myself. But it's
you're
fine.
fine. I'm dyslexic, so I mean, I'm not
You're like,
judging at
there's no
all.
shame here. I love it. Okay, well, Izzy, let's just dive on in and just share a little bit with us of what your upbringing was like. How did you come to meet the Lord? And a little bit just of your background.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up with two parents that really love the Lord and put Him first before everything. As you can see, I'm in a recording studio right now. My dad, he is a Christian music producer, and that's what he did for my
Mhm.
whole childhood. My mom
Awesome.
was an English teacher, and yeah, they just served the Lord with everything. And me and my sister both were raised in an amazing environment. We went to Christian school, we went to
Yeah.
church. And so I really grew up in an environment where I knew a lot about who God was,
Mm,
but I felt like I didn't know him truly very personally. And I
right.
feel like that's a lot of people's stories who grow up
Yeah.
in the church, sadly. And I just remember one day I was in fourth grade and I was getting ready for bed, and I just asked my dad, what does it actually mean to follow Jesus? And
Mm,
that conversation eventually led to me asking Jesus into my heart, and just my dad leading me through that prayer, which was really special. But it
wow.
was still a couple of years before I actually started understanding what
Right.
that meant for my life. I started going to youth group when I was in 6th grade, and that was when the gears started shifting in my brain of what is God's love and what does
Mm,
that mean for me? What is salvation? And all of those different, more deep topics.
yeah.
And so, as I began to kind of venture into that and understand what God's love meant, I began to become homeschooled. And that experience was something that we felt the Lord lead us into. And the Lord spoke to my mom very directly about that. And when I was in 8th grade, I went on a mission trip for the very first time. And if it wasn't for me
Mm,
being homeschooled, I wouldn't have had that experience.
wow.
And so I got to go to Uganda for 2 weeks. And
Wow.
when I saw the women and the men over there who were in church, and just them praising the Lord with everything that they
Yep.
had, I realized that they had so much gratitude and joy for
Mm,
life. And I grew up in an amazing environment with amazing community and amazing people, but I lacked that passion and that zeal
wow.
for life that they had.
Yeah.
And so that really inspired me to pursue Jesus more wholeheartedly and to take
Mm,
my faith seriously. And so I really see that as my turning point of when I really started following Jesus.
yeah.
Uh, and that was really the point where I was like, I know that I'm supposed to be in ministry. I know that I'm in this for life and I love the Lord more than anything.
Mm,
And I'm so grateful that I had a family that was after God's heart
yeah.
and pursued the Lord with everything. So I'm super, super grateful for that.
No, I love that too. I think there's something so powerful about mission trips, especially like getting out of your own like hometown area and you're not even just traveling different states, like you're like across the country. And I have also been to Uganda. It is my favorite place ever. The people are incredible. And I think it just challenges like who you are, what you're doing, what you're about, and really does. And that's really cool that you got to experience that at such a young age too. Do you
Mhm.
feel like that was pivotal for you? I mean, you kind of said that's where it started to change and develop. Do you think it would have been a different trajectory if you hadn't gone on a trip like that at that age?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a really amazing church, and a lot of my growth, I feel like, as a believer was credited to my amazing youth pastors from there, the
Mm.
Jamesons, um, Josh and Carrie,
Yeah, wonderful
and that whole
people.
family. I love them,
Yes.
and I credit a lot of my faith journey to them, but
Mm,
I feel like that trip really pivoted my desire, something that my mom talked about a lot, and this kind of gets into a little bit of our topic today, but I
yeah.
have always been really drawn to people
Mm,
and always kind of desired to love people well. But I
yeah.
feel like also on the flip side of that, that can easily go into over fixating on what people thought about me. And so when I was
Mm,
going into middle school, I really was kind of friends with a lot of people that I probably shouldn't have been friends with or been well acquainted with.
yeah.
And I was kind of starting to pursue things that my parents weren't super pumped about me pursuing. And so
Mm,
I feel like that trip really aligned my vision with what the Lord desires for our lives and what his passions and his desires are for us. And I feel like if I hadn't gone on that trip, that adjusting wouldn't have been made possible. So I'm
yeah.
super grateful for that.
No, that's huge. Cause so did you stay homeschooled through middle school and high school, or did you eventually go to a public school?
It was just 7th and 8th grade. So
Just
it was
7th and 8th
just 2
grade?
years, but those 2
Okay.
years felt long at first.
You're like, "Okay." So then you went to public school for high school,
I went back to private. So I
back to
actually
private.
went
Okay, okay.
back to the school that I'd left,
Gotcha.
for high school. So,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. So to get to go on that trip right before going back into a private school or
Mhm.
not being homeschooled anymore, that's huge.
Mhm.
So specifically in your story, because this is kind of where we'll dive more into the topic for today, is where did you start to struggle with your worth growing up through middle school, through high school? Maybe it's even something you struggle with today. What did that look like for you when it came to where am I placing my worth? Where am I finding that?
I think for me, it honestly started, I would say back probably around 4th or 5th grade. So I was pretty young
Yeah.
when it first started. And I think it really stemmed from that desire that I touched on of I wanted to be liked by people. I think
Yeah.
it genuinely stemmed from I want the approval of others. I want to be seen as beautiful. I want to be seen as funny. I always had kind of been a very charismatic person. I'd always been willing to step up on a stage and make a goof of myself.
Love it.
But that quickly turned into me just wanting the approval of others and me
Mm,
wanting to look a certain way and feel beautiful and wanting affirmation. And so I feel like that is what made me kind of fixate on my physical appearance, specifically my weight and
mm,
my body. And so it started out really simple as just kind of like every single time I passed by a mirror, I would kind of like just look at myself and
mm,
look at my body and kind of be like, oh, I wish this thing were different, or I wish my stomach was smaller than it was.
right.
And my friend group growing up was a lot of girls that actually played basketball. So they were really, really tall. I was
Mm,
friends with all the athletes. And so people's body types were all changing and really different, starting probably around 5th grade. That's when
yeah.
all of that starts happening. And so right around that time was when I started really feeling like, okay, like I feel like I look a little bit different than my close
Mm,
friends. Does that mean there's something wrong with me?
wow.
And also, what started happening was I started sort of fixating on food as well. And I
Mm,
didn't really know where that came from. Later on, I came to find out that my mom had actually struggled with an eating disorder in high school. And
wow.
so a lot of it was a genetic predisposition to these things that I didn't even know had existed at that point.
Wow.
And so I would struggle kind of with overeating or undereating or fixating on my body a little bit. And then in high school, it got a lot worse because a huge part of my story actually is I have dealt with a lot of chronic health issues, specifically with my digestive tract. And
Okay.
so there was this focus on food and your body just from that
Mm,
alone of like, what are you putting in your body? Why is my body reacting this way to these foods? Am I allergic to this? Like,
mm,
so it was just kind of every day thinking about that,
yeah.
not just for appearance, but also just for my own physical health
Yeah.
of
That's hard.
wanting to manage that. And so I would say that the big focus for me has always been body image and food. And that has continued into adulthood. But I think that the Lord has given me a lot of revelation and insight about how to not let those things captivate my heart and my mind in the same way that they did before. And I think that the more that I've grown sensitive to God's voice, the more that
Mm,
I can discern, okay, this is a thought that's from the Lord and this is a thought that's not from the Lord. And letting certain things have more authority over my life than those impulses or those desires or those
good.
comparisons.
That's really, really good. I love that. Of just, yeah, being aware, discerning
Mhm.
what's God's voice, what's not, what's going to dictate. Because we allow just our feelings and our emotions to dictate us on a daily basis, and just
Yeah.
the outsources of everything surrounding us, and really the Lord saying, like, I've given you the ability to take
Mhm.
authority of those
Mhm.
things, and
Yeah.
to take captive every thought so that it doesn't take
Yeah.
captive of us. So that's really huge. Something that you have been such a great advocate for, something that you've spoken up about in several of our events with Cherish Ministry at conferences, is talking about the struggles with body image and with body dysmorphia. And it has made such a huge impact, because I think for me specifically, even growing up, like, we just didn't have a lot of, like, maybe we just didn't have the right language for it, or it wasn't just talked about. And I feel like it's cool now that it's branching out and we're actually being more open with
Yeah.
the different bodies and sizes, and kind of being more inclusive in that, rather than the
Mhm.
whole line of thin is in, or you have to look this certain way.
Right.
So I think with that specifically, how have you, like, share a little bit more about your own personal testimony and story with the struggles? I know you just kind of tapped on, like, the
Mhm.
surface, but kind of dive in deeper for us.
Yeah, I would say some of the really pivotal years for me were actually my college years. I went to Northwest University in Kirkland, and
Mm,
I met so many amazing people there and had such a great experience. But coming out of high school, I'd missed about 50 to 75% of my sophomore and junior year from
mm,
my health issues and just
wow.
wrestling with that. And so I was really excited to be in an atmosphere where I had a different schedule so that I had more flexibility and all of these different things. And one of the things that was really difficult was that as soon as I got to college, a bunch of my health issues started flaring up again. And
Mm,
so my body just sort of started shutting down a little bit in terms of I wasn't really hungry and I would feel really nauseous all the time. And so I started kind of unintentionally losing a lot of weight.
um,
And I remember people in my life would start commenting on it. And it's not in a way I feel like when people comment on other people's weight or bodies, they aren't necessarily even aware of the impact some of those
mm,
things have or those statements have. Because if you haven't struggled with it, I don't think you know the gravity of those statements as much.
mm,
And so it would be like, you look really great. Like, what have you been doing? Or, those sorts of statements where it's like, okay, well, then what was wrong with me before? Why do I
wow.
look better now? And it's almost like those underhanded compliments that I feel like if you haven't struggled with body image, you don't know that they're underhanded.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so anyways, I started getting a lot of those comments, and then I feel like it started becoming more of like, okay, well, my body is like not wanting to eat just because of all these health issues, and I'm also getting like losing weight because of it. So I guess this is just kind of where I'm at,
Mm,
and being frustrated with it, but also being like, okay, well, maybe it's good because maybe I'm like getting the binge eating under control, and maybe this is going to be a way
wow.
that I can get the body that I want. And I remember there was a very specific moment where we have this event called Pursuit at Northwest, and
Mm,
it's a worship night, and it happens every Monday. And I remember a couple of my friends from outside of school had come with me that evening, and I stood on the balcony, which I never ever stand up there.
mm,
And I just was worshiping, and I just felt like the whole room went completely silent.
wow.
And I just felt the Lord very clearly say, if you want to fulfill the calling that I've put upon your life, you can't keep living this way. It's not taking care of the vessel that I've given you
Mm,
to do ministry for my kingdom. And it was just very distinct. And it was kind of a moment where I was like, okay, this is not just about me. And this is not just about my preferences. This is about something so much more. And so that was a really huge moment for me. And I feel like that really pivoted things in terms of,
mm,
okay, this is not just about me and my own insecurities, but this is also something that the Lord is passionate about. And he cares about me
Yeah.
and wants me to treat my body well and in a way that's honoring to him. And so since then, I still have struggled a ton with
Yeah.
insecurity. I mean, senior year of college was really bad, at health issues wise, and there was just a lot going on. And it was one of the worst years that I've probably had in
Mhm.
terms of it. But when you navigate it with the perspective of, okay, but I know that the Lord sees this about me. And even though I may not feel this way in this moment, I know that He is steadfast and that He's faithful and that these things remain true. Even if I don't feel those things to be true, I feel like that is what has
Yeah.
helped me weather the storm of those emotions and those
Yeah.
feelings. Because insecurity for a lot of people, it's one of those things that keeps coming up. Comparison keeps coming up. And I
Absolutely.
don't know if it's gonna disappear forever for everyone.
Right.
But it's more, how do I navigate this in the day to day? And I think the Lord
Yeah.
has been so gracious in helping me navigate it in a way that's honoring to Him. So
I think that's huge, and just hitting at the fact that it is probably always gonna be there, which in one hand, it's like, that's really daunting and frustrating,
mhm.
but in the other, it's like, but he's given us the tools, just like you're
Yeah.
saying, to navigate, like, how do I combat those thoughts? Because it's not a if they come, it's when they come,
Yeah.
and being able, I'm sure for you even to look back and just see the faithfulness of God and what
Mhm.
he's brought you through, and even just that moment that you're describing of, being in the balcony and him having
Mhm.
that moment with you, really
Mhm.
challenging your thoughts and bringing it to the fact of this isn't just about you, it's about the
Yeah.
impact I've called you to. Like, he's speaking
Mhm.
purpose in that moment. And I
Mhm.
think that helps us take our eyes off of ourselves, because I think
Mhm.
that's obviously a tactic of the enemy when it comes to insecurities or
Mhm.
comparison. It's like our eyes are everywhere but on him. And in that
Mhm.
moment, he was kind of like refocusing Izzy. He's like,
Mhm.
hey, I have something for you,
Yeah.
and I've given you what you need to get there.
Mhm.
And now it's in your court if you want to choose that. And I love
Yeah.
that imagery that
Mhm.
he's speaking purpose into your life, and
Mhm.
he'll still use the pain
Mhm.
for your platform in it, because now I could
Yeah.
say you're like my go-to person that I want to have on the podcast or at our event speaking on this,
Mhm.
because you speak to it so well.
Mhm.
And even in your last breakout session you did at Cherish
Mhm.
conference, I had so many girls just like, please get Izzy again. That was so good and so helpful. So
Mhm.
I think that just shows that, the Lord was preparing in you. And
Mhm.
sometimes, just like you said, you kind of have to go through it to be able to speak to it for people to
Yeah.
understand and for you to understand what
Mhm.
they're navigating with.
Mhm.
How do you think today's culture or social media has had an impact on the way young women view themselves in their bodies?
This is such an interesting facet of this topic because if you think about, like, the '70s or the '80s or the '90s, right? That was really when magazine and magazine journalism was huge, and
Mm,
so what women saw in magazines was retouched photos of women. It was, all pretty much one size, one body type
mm,
represented in the media, but also they were only looking at those things maybe once a day.
mm.
Maybe they were looking at a magazine, like, when they were on the toilet or, like, when they were at the
Real.
doctor's office, right? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't this constant
Wow.
inundation of media, and I think that even though we have more diversity in the content that we consume, we're consuming such a high quantity of it
Mm,
that those things can really invade our thoughts,
wow.
and I know for me at least, you can find any body type that you want on the internet to compare yourself to, you can
Mm,
find any ideal body type, like, on TikTok, like, you literally can see, okay, this is a girl who's, like, my weight, and she's my height, and this is how she looks, and so, like, is that an accurate representation of what my body looks like? Or, like,
wow.
there's this girl that is 19 years old, I'm 24 now, so my body is not gonna look like a 19-year-old's body, but we see these certain body types just
Mm,
escalated and elevated to this is what beauty is, whether it's an Addison Rae or a Charlie D'Amelio or
mm,
even the Kardashians still, I feel like, have a lot
yeah.
of impact. None of those women are doing, I don't think, anything wrong in the way that they're just posting on social media like any
Right.
other person is, but at the same time, so many girls want what they have,
Right.
and so I think even though, there's more diversity in the media because we're looking at it so consistently,
Yeah.
it can be really crippling in terms of body image because you're constantly seeing girls
Mm,
that look different than you and wondering, "Am I good enough?"
wow.
Am I pretty enough? Do I dress trendy enough? Am I up with, the latest trend of like the Free People quilted bag or like the Stanley Cup or no, it's a Wallace now or
Or do
all
I
of
know
these
what
things.
the dupes are,
Yeah, it's like it's beyond just body image, but it's can
Yeah.
I stay in line with what is
Mm,
cool, what is beautiful, what society sees as valuable. And I think it's so interesting too because of the internet. Trends are now going global and going across states. Like something that my parents will talk about is when they were kids, like the trends that were happening in California were completely different than the trends that were happening in New York. But
dang.
now,
Yeah.
because of the internet, trends that are happening in, Washington can also be trends that are happening in Hawaii or trends that are
Right.
happening in Australia, right? Like
Yeah,
because of the internet.
internationally for sure.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, not only are we comparing with people that are walking the same life as us in the same city as us, we're now comparing, okay, with people that are across the world that we don't even know. We're seeing them on the
Wow.
internet and we're like, I want to be that person when you have
Mm,
no concept of what their life is or who they are,
mm,
or their day-to-day struggles. And so I think that it's more just having an awareness of, okay, what am I seeing and how is it determining how I view myself? And I have even a really, really close friend who has really intense anorexia and she just doesn't have social media anymore because she's like, I just don't want that to make me compare myself to other people.
yeah.
And I know that it's not a healthy thing for me. And I don't think that anyone has to delete social media if you don't want to. But I do think it is just an awareness of, okay, how much am I consuming media and how much of it is me comparing myself to other people versus
Right.
me, just getting a laugh or having fun with it. So,
No, I think that's so powerful. You just educated me on so much too. That's like, wow, that actually tracks and makes sense. And I think
yeah.
a good way of looking at that too is when you come to the idea of, well, I'm going to take a little break from social media, but it's so hard for you to do. That's probably a good indicator that it's become kind of like an idol and something
Mhm,
you really lean on. And it's so
mhm,
funny because while there's so much good that can come from social media, like I'm so
mhm.
grateful for, the platform I can have with Cherish Ministry and getting
Right.
positive encouragement. On the other hand, it can also be just like you're
Mhm,
talking about, like the thing that I keep going back to for the same results that I know I'm going to get of feeling
mhm,
less than, feeling depressed, feeling discouraged. And it's crazy. I mean, that's literally like what we call insanity, doing the same thing again and again, hoping
mhm.
for different results. And so
Yeah,
it is tricky. It's everywhere. So it's like if I cut this off, it feels like
yeah.
you're cutting off a limb or like you're not
Mhm,
connected to the
mhm,
people around you. But yet it's so wild because I think about my time in high school and
mhm.
social media wasn't even I think we had just started Instagram and Snapchat
Yeah.
was like the big thing. Instagram no one knew how to use. And life was great. Like, even, like, COVID, I
Mhm,
think, is when TikTok took off,
mhm,
and I think in my life before then, I was like, I wasn't trying all these hair
mhm.
products and skin
Yeah.
routines and, being so easily influenced to buy
Mhm,
everything and anything from Amazon delivered the next day. So, I mean, what you're saying really is true, is how
mhm,
easily influenced we are and how distracted we can become from
mhm,
the very thing that the Lord was trying to teach you
mhm,
in that moment of like, "Hey,
mhm,
eyes on me." I love that. That was
mhm,
very, very educational. What advice hearing all of that, I mean, that's a
yeah.
load to hear. What advice do you have for girls who feel this pressure to look a certain way? I mean, you think about the high school and college age students that are
Mhm,
growing up, this is the norm to them. How do they
mhm.
navigate that? How would you encourage them in that?
I think the first thing, is just the truth that no one is built to look the same.
Mm,
All of our genetics are completely different for a reason, right?
mm.
Like, we're not meant to look like a carbon copy of everyone. If you walked into your high school and everyone looked exactly like you probably would run out the door screaming because 'cause you'd be
Terrified.
terrified, right? Like,
Like,
we
this
as
is
much
weird. Yeah.
yeah, as much as we want to look like other people. I think that if that actually was our reality, we would be kind of sad and
Mm,
feel a sense of lack of belonging, right?
wow.
Of I don't feel unique. I don't feel special.
Mm,
And I think
wow.
that the Lord has genuinely made each of us so unique. And I think that in high school, particularly, there can be certain social circles where it's like, this is what we value. And in order to be seen as popular or cool, you have to look this way or dress this way or think this
Mm,
way. And I think that one of the things that you begin to learn as you go into adulthood is that how about you find some friends that like similar things to you and not
mm,
alter your desires, alter the way that
good.
you look to please other people, because there will be people that will share your same faith, like
Yeah.
want to wear similar outfits. And I remember when I met my best friend in college, I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I have never met this person before, and yet we align in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think that that shows to me, like, okay, the Lord brings the right people in the right timing. And in high school, we can desire so desperately to belong, and the Lord doesn't lose sight of those prayers, and
Yeah.
he answers those in time. And so if you're looking for belonging by wanting to look a certain way, whether it's body related or clothing related or trend related, whatever it could be,
Right.
yeah, like ultimately at the end of the day, the Lord ultimately sees your heart because he made it,
Yeah.
and he wants you to find a place where you feel supported and built into and
Yeah.
valued for who he's called you to be,
Mm,
and not just bend yourself to the ways of the people around you just so you can get a glance in one
yeah.
direction from a guy or from the
Yeah.
girls that you really want to impress. Like at
Mm,
the end of the day, we are living to please him above all else,
yeah.
and we will find people that will align with those desires and will make us feel valued and belong
Right.
through that. And so I would just say, I know it can be hard to embrace the differences, but also the people that enjoy your differences are going to be in it for the long haul with you,
Right.
versus the people that want you to alter and change are going to be dissatisfied time and time again.
Mm,
And so, if you're looking for belonging, and that's the stem of the comparison, I would say that eventually you will find a place that you belong, because you belong in the Lord's family, and he
yeah.
loves you, and people after his heart will see that. And
Yeah.
then the other thing that I would say is, if it is like a secret comparison where no one really knows how deeply you struggle with it,
Mm,
I think that one of the most reassuring things is that the Lord sees all of our pain and all of our
yeah.
hardship. And so you're not actually
Mm,
alone in that. And that can feel like a cliche, but it is
yeah.
so true. And so
Yep.
many times the Lord has spoken to me just in pictures of him just holding my hand.
Mm,
And we talk a lot about Psalm 139 when it comes to body image. But one of my favorite verses from that actually just talks about, you see me before I was born. Like, you have every day of my life planned.
mm,
And he sees us beyond just our physical appearance, but he sees us uh,
yeah.
also in our hearts. And so if
Yeah.
you're wrestling with insecurity and comparison, he sees that for
Yeah.
what it is.
That's
And
good.
so it's not something that you need to fear at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a beautiful picture. And it is. It's like, especially growing up in the church or being around the church, when you hear things like that, your immediate reaction is like, ugh.
Yeah.
But when you really wrestle and sit with that and allow it
Mhm.
to, just wash over you, it's just a beautiful thing. And it's exactly what you need. And I think if we're constantly changing ourselves or trying to be like the person next to us, you'll miss out
Mhm.
on the very people that God has brought into your life or is
Yeah.
trying to put before you. Because I think
Yeah.
about there has been so many times in my life where I'm chasing after crowds of people to get their
Mhm.
attention, and I may win it for a moment, and then I
Yeah.
realize in their presence, this ain't it, like, it's
Yeah.
not working, and then it's, like, the very opposite of the people that I think I
Yeah.
wouldn't connect with end up being my closest, deepest
Yeah.
relationships, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, God really knows me better than I know myself." Like,
Yeah.
He knows what we need, and so and there's
Yeah.
also been, seasons of absolute loneliness and
Yeah.
waiting for that, but deeply trusting that God is good and faithful in that and sees
Mhm.
that, and I think that's a big thing we talk about here too is, like, a lot of the times we settle and we compromise and
Mhm.
we're like, "Oh, I'd rather have bad friends than no friends," or,
Yeah.
and it's really like, man, if you would just rest in the Lord and know what
Mhm.
he says about you and find confidence in that. And even just the picture you're painting earlier of recognizing like there's uniqueness to you and it's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing, not a bad thing,
Yeah.
then I think you start to attract people that
Yeah.
the Lord just starts doing stuff and he brings people your
Mhm.
way and you're like, "Wow, I could have never created this type of community,"
Yeah.
And that's been the great thing of doing a podcast or
Mhm.
having this platform, because I get to bring forth other girls that are like wanting real, wanting
Yeah,
tangible, wanting vulnerability. And it's like, wow, you just put your real self out there and what you desire, and all of a sudden, like that will
yeah,
start being attracted back. And
yeah.
it's the best type of community. So I think that's really great
Mhm.
advice.
Yeah.
Um, we'll end with this one.
Mhm.
What guidance would you offer to girls who understand the truth of what God says about them and their bodies, but find it challenging to
Mhm.
believe and apply that truth in their daily lives?
Mm. I would say the first thing is acknowledging shame is not from God. And I think that with insecurity, what tends to happen is, okay, I know God's truth and I know what he says in scripture and I don't feel it to be true. So, like, what's wrong with me? And,
Mm,
we start shaming ourselves for feeling really human emotions. And the reality is that God knows that we're human and
yeah.
he loves us in that. And one of the things that the Lord put upon my heart before we started recording was this song Desirable by Upper Room.
Mm,
And the first lyrics literally are, "What do you see in me to love me the way that you do? So much patience, so much mercy. You made me desirable to you." And I
wow.
feel like that's such a summary of God's love for us. Like he meets us in our pain. He
Wow.
doesn't shame us for being like, "Ah, you're so human today. I just don't want to talk
Yeah.
to you anymore." No, he
Yeah.
draws near to our pain and he says, "Let me guide you through this."
Yep.
And so the first I would say is don't shame yourself for struggling with insecurity. So many amazing women in my life struggle with insecurity, and so many people that are doing incredible kingdom work have struggled with insecurity.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't disqualify you from anything. And so don't shame yourself for that at all.
Good.
The second thing I would say is do remind yourself the word of God, like whether it's writing it on a mirror in your house, or I have like note cards in my car that I have like
Mm,
shoved in my Bath and Body Works little scent diffuser that I
love
can look
it.
at when I'm driving. And so there's so many scriptures in Psalms specifically that I can think of that talk about the way that God views us
Yeah.
and our humanity. I think that David is such an amazing example of what it looks like to be human and also follow Jesus at the same time.
Mm,
And he knows, okay, God, like this is how you see me, but I don't feel it right now. And
yeah.
so show me, what it means to follow you in this valley and in this hard place.
Wow.
And so I feel like Psalms and so many different parts of scripture, just repeating those things over yourself, even when you
Yeah.
don't feel it to be true,
Yeah.
is so, so powerful. And then I also would just say for those of you that are younger, who are you friends with? Like
Mm,
I think that our friend circles say so much about us.
yes.
And I think that as a young girl, it can be so easy to stay friends with people who are talking crap about you or are being mean or are feeding into these lies from the enemy that tell you that you're not enough. And so if you have those voices in your life, kind of reevaluating, are these people that I want in my inner circle?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you can't, know them at all. Like you don't want to ignore them the next day at school, but how can you reevaluate, okay, who do I want the primary friendships in my life to
Yeah.
be? And is this person someone that is going to speak truth over my life? And just start asking God, like, can you bring people into my life that will speak life
Absolutely.
over me and encourage me in who you're calling me to be? I think that's a really simple prayer. And
Mm,
then the next thing that I would say kind of goes alongside of that, but just ask the Lord, who do you see me to be? And I think
mm,
that the Lord has revealed so much to me, not only through those prayers that I've prayed over myself, but also through people that have prayed that over me. How do you
yeah.
see Izzy? Like, how are ways
Mm,
that you've wired Izzy? And even maybe like when you ask for prayer, next time you go to an altar call, just ask the person, hey, could you ask the Lord like how he's wired me? And
mm,
just that person praying those encouragements over you of the Lord's heart,
yeah.
I think is so empowering. And so it's ultimately not something that you have to do alone at all. And I think
Mm,
remembering, okay, this is not just a me thing. This is a lot of people. Like when I did my breakout session at conference, I sent out a Google form to a bunch of people that I knew. It was about 100 people. And every single person that took it said that they struggled with insecurity. And they were all people that
wow.
I knew personally, people
Mm,
that are teenagers, people that are in their 20s, people that are adults and middle-aged and like living their full-fledged lives all took it and said that they've struggled with insecurity at some point in their life.
Mm,
So it's not a unique to you thing, and
yeah.
everyone for the most part navigates it in some way, but ultimately the Lord works through all of it. Is what
Mm.
it's.
I love that. I love that you just brought it home too. The fact that we are all in it together. We are all
Mhm.
struggling, and there's no way of it stinks. It's like you don't graduate from it, but you definitely get more educated and more experience to navigate, the punches that the enemy will try to use to keep you convinced that you're disqualified. And I love that you hit at the fact that it doesn't disqualify you. You just continue to bring that before the Lord, bring that before your community and your close
Mhm.
people so that you can fight what he's called you to fight and live out the purpose he's called you to. Izzy, you are incredible, a favorite of mine. This was such a good episode. So, girls, if today you were encouraged by this episode, which of course you were, how could you not? Make sure that you share this with some girls in your world. Make sure you're following along, and we will see you again back here soon.